Alright, pupulsuhan natin ang mga opinyon at pagtindig ng mga Pinoy ukol sa mga isyong panlipunan.
At lahat ng trending at hot topics from the past few weeks, papag-usapan natin ngayon sa online show na ito.
Alright, hello po sa inyong lahat. Ako po si Jules Kiang, Head of Community ng Rappler.
And my name is Happy Ferrarin of Rappler Plus. Tumindig, makialam at kumilos.
Ito po ang Courage On. Hi Happy, how are you?
Oh, hi Jules. Excited na ako para sa episode 2 ng show na ito. At syempre, live po tayo ngayon lahat. So lahat ng mga, if we make mistakes, that's because it's live.
Yeah.
So live yun.
TV.
This is live sa mga Rappler online platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, tsaka LinkedIn. O, di ba? Social.
Pati LinkedIn, oo. Ibig sabihin, pwede kayong sumama syempre sa discussions natin, alright? So, gamitin po natin ang ating official hashtag #CourageOn sa Facebook, sa Twitter, sa YouTube, pati na rin sa LinkedIn, sabi nga ni Happy, kung gusto nyo makibahagi sa ating online talakayan, or syempre, gamitin nyo rin yung comment section natin sa live section, kasi pwede po namin kayong batiin mamaya kung ano ang inyong mga pananaw ukol sa mga pag-uusapan natin.
Ayan. So may pag-greet. Meron pang tayong pag-greet. So yun yung maganda kasi live tayo. So Jules, syempre mga hot topic at mga trending topics ang papag-usapan natin ngayon, 'di ba? At syempre one of those things, elections and voter registration. Kasi we have 47 days na lang before registration. Ay, 47. Actually,
babalikan natin yan mamaya kung ilan ba talaga. Yan ang tanong natin, first question natin para sa audience natin. Ilang araw na lang bago matapos ang registration? Okay, sabihin niyo ang tamang sagot sa comment section at mamaya bibigyan kayo ng prize ni Happy live from Sydney.
Okay. Ang galing.
Alright, at syempre bukod pa dyan, Happy, ilang linggo na lang bago na rin masaksihan natin itong filing of candidacy. Sino-sino ba yung mga magsasabungan sa 2022 elections? Magkakaalaman na yan pagdating ng October.
Tama. So ngayon, Jules, we have some guests with us para pag-usapan ang mga experience nila. Pero before that, meron tayong battle cry sa Rappler. Ano yun, Jules?
Yes, of course, ang battle cry natin sa Rappler for the upcoming elections, ito yung we decide atin ang Pilipinas. Okay? So, mahalagang malaman natin kung bakit nga ba ito ang napili ng Rappler na battle cry para sa election coverage. Kaya para mas maintindihan yan, panoorin po natin ang video na ito.
Kulay na pagbabago Duterte.
I, Rodrigo Roa Duterte,
your concern is human rights. Mine is human life. Shoot them dead.
order bago ni Mayor. Di lang daw mo patyon. Kung silo na mo bisong, wala na bisong, wala na may silbi.
Mahirap kayo, magtiis kayo sa hirap at gutom, wala akong pakialam.
Alipin po tayo ng China. Parang wala tayong karapatan sa sarili natin. Sa upan.
I just simply love Xi Jinping. He understood, he understands my problem, and is willing to help. And I'd like to say thank you, China.
Ikaw, ABS-CBN, I will see to it that you're out. There's nothing really to be extra scared of that coronavirus thing.
We were excellent. Na-control po natin ang pagkalat ng sakit.
The Philippines' total COVID-19 caseload reaches 1 million Monday, as the Health Department logs 8,929 new confirmed infections.
Maliit na bagay ito sa buhay natin. Marami tayong dinaanan mas grabe, mas mahirap, mas namululuha ngayon. Gusto ko nang umiyak sa harap ninyo.
Hindi lahat may ayuda, hindi lahat nakakakuha ng sapat na ayuda. Gutom yung mga Pilipino and kailangan natin magkaroon ng action.
Wala lang isip yung mga gagawin yan. What they just do is just to show to the people that they care, but they do not really care because of their ignorance.
Dapat hindi masamain ng gobyerno dahil tumutulong na nga sila eh. Tapos binibigyan pa nila ng ibang kahulugan.
Pagbulag ka na, no? Hindi mo na di-differentiate ang liwanag sa dilim.
Okay. We decide atin ng Pilipinas. Yan po ang battle cry ng Rappler para sa election 2022. Medyo mabigat, Happy, no? Kasi parang nakaka-trauma na pasadahan lahat ng mga nangyari for the past 5 years. Pero yun nga po, we're still under a pandemic. Yan po yung mga issues na pinagdaanan natin. And those are, all of it are election issues, Happy. Kaya naman, palapit ang end of registration at nararamdaman na rin natin itong election fever. Parang ayoko bagitin yung fever, no? Pero kahit nasa pandemya pa rin tayo, siyempre tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung pag-organize ng mga kabataan. Dahil katatapos lang po ng International Youth Day, magandang makadaldalan natin itong mga ilang leader kabataan na kumikilos para sa panghihikayat na magparehistro ang mga kabataan. Okay, una natin makakasama, Happy, ang spokesperson ng Tatak Botante. Let's welcome RJ Suarez. Hi, RJ.
Hello, RJ. Welcome. Kasama rin natin ngayon para sa usapan na ito si Gladys Milyoga ng First Time Voters Network. Hello, Gladys. Welcome to the show.
Hello po.
Alright. Go ahead, Happy.
So, yeah, we saw, syempre yung video na yun, parang it was a good way for us to look back at what happened in the past 5 years. But I think, for me, I'm curious kasi, especially for the first-time voters, what a way to get initiated into the world of being a voter, diba? Parang first time na nga, tapos major pandemic pa ngayon. So, I'm curious to know what are the main anxieties or fears that our first-time voters are facing right now?
Okay. Okay lang po ba mauna? Alright.
Go.
So, hello po. So, we in First Time Voters Network, no, yung major na initiative namin is to actually help registrants, no, get registered. May registration drive kami na ongoing in different areas right now. And to be honest, but nung nag-start kaming mag-organize around January, February, tapos parang sabi namin, okay, ready na sa March. Let's get this rolling. Tapos biglang nag-ECQ. And then months went by, June na kami nakapag-start ng actual registration. And yung parang preparation towards that, nung ginawa namin nakakatakot. And parang hindi namin ma-perfect yung parang routine to do registration. Kasi young people, natatakot sila sa pandemic actually, no? Kahit parang yung perception ay excited na silang lumabas dahil sobrang tagal na. Natatakot sila and at the same time yung relatives nila natatakot. May ilang mga pre-register kami, no? So we assisted them na hindi pinayagan on day of registration na lumabas kasi natatakot yung parents nila na ma-expose sila sa virus. So una-una yung pandemic, yun pa din yung talagang nakakatakot for them. Especially yung mga student, wala pa silang vaccine. Wala pa sila sa priority list natin ngayon. And kahit ako, nung nag-start kaming mag-help on ground, hindi pa ako vaccinated noon. Parang nagpapaswab ako halos every week. So medyo sanay na. Pero nakakatakot pa din even now kahit na ako ay vaccinated. Pero the young people, hindi pa sila vaccinated and yun yung isa sa malaking challenge, no? Which is something na kailangan din nila pero no choice kasi wala pa. And ayun, malaki pa rin yung pinopost ng pandemic sa registration.
So biggest problem talaga itong pandemic, no? So RJ, pwede mong dagdagan kung ano pa yung mga challenges na yun. Pero aside from the challenges, ano yung something na excited ikaw personally at yung grupo mo ng mga kabataan sa paparating na 2022 elections? Ano yun?
Yes, tamang-tama po yung sinabi ni Ma'am Gladys. The pandemic and its occasional surges really are a cause of anxiety. The lockdowns are impediments to the voter registration process, especially on ECQ and MECQ areas. So despite the many efforts of COMELEC to make it more accessible through satellite registration centers, many first-time voters are still worried kung makakaabot ba sila sa registration since we found out that some cities or municipalities have low capacities on registration. So many first-time voters would line up as early as 4 or 5 a.m. only to find out na may cut-off pala. So sana po ma-reconsider na COMELEC na ma-extend ang registration period. Ultimately, it's still the fear of COVID. No? Many members of the youth, most especially, are unvaccinated. But what we are excited about is that we're excited about the youth. No, the youth as the largest voting bloc of all age demographics, and having reached COMELEC's target of first-time voters. When the youth unites, no, we can make a huge impact on choosing our next leaders. Also, I'm excited about the many projects and programs of youth-led organizations to increase the level of awareness of voters on the electoral process and some relevant societal issues surrounding the youth.
Right. Thank you, RJ. So you mentioned also that some LGUs or some people hindi sila nakakaboto kasi may cut off yung LGUs. So we're talking about the capacity of our government to actually have all of these people registering. That's a lot of people lining up from what time to what time. So my question to the both of you, are you in favor of an extension for registration, for the registration period? Gladys?
Okay, so basically, for our celebration ng International Youth Day, we launched our unity statement, no, calling for COMELEC to extend at least 1 more month, no, for voter registration. Kasi sa dami ng lockdown in different areas, no, so parang kahit kinakount natin kung 47 days na lang sa COMELEC, hindi lahat nagkaroon ng equal chances na 47 days. Kasi for example, dito sa NCR, mukhang hanggang end of August na yung lockdown na naman. So, hindi na siya 47 days for people here. And ganun din yung na-experience ng maraming tao, no, sa iba't ibang lugar. Hindi equal yung naging access nila sa COMELEC, kumbaga. And we support the call, no, na I know na-achieve na ng COMELEC yung 4 million targets, but young people are calling for it. That means na marami pa talaga on the ground na hindi lang siguro natin napapansin, pero I think both COMELEC can't deny, no, yung mga nararanasan na challenges and incapacities mismo ng local, pero that doesn't mean, no, na hindi na natin papansinin yung tawag ng mga kabataan to extend kahit 1 month, no. I think they will take full advantage of that extension.
Thank you, Gladys. Is there anything your group is doing, or RJ, are your groups calling for extension of registration? And if people want to join this effort, meron ba kayong petition that they can sign, or what can they do?
Yes, please. No, kami pong sektor ng kabataan, especially in my organization in Tatak Butante, we really are hoping for an extension. Dahil sa Metro Manila pa lang po, napakarami ng ECQ na nangyayari. And kailangan nating ibawas kung gaano katagal yung ECQ dun sa natitirang araw left for voter registration. So that's assuming bababa na yung community quarantine level sa Metro Manila. So kung may extend pa ito, at mananatiling mayroong mga lockdown, pabawas po yun o pabawas sa mga natitirang araw. So sana po talaga ma-extend dahil may problema po sa capacity. Even yung NCR Plus lang, most especially yung mga nasa provinces. So kami po sa Tatak Butante, ongoing pa rin po yung aming mga voter registration drives, voters education awareness campaigns, and of course, tinatawagan namin ang mga kasama namin, mga kapwa naming kabataan, na sumali sa mga movement na ito to spread the word that registration is available. Well, in some areas right now, it's available, it's safe. Let's do it. Let's not walk to the registration center. Once it's open, we run to the registration center. Thank you.
Thank you so much, RJ. Okay, so as we wrap up this interview, no, ang title ng show na to is Courage On. So lagi namin tinatanong to sa mga guests natin dito sa show, saan kayo humuhugot ng tapang para sa inyong mga advocacy? Especially now, may invisible tayong kalaban, which is COVID. Ang daming mga threats sa youth sector and other sectors. So saan kayo humuhugot ng tapang? Very quickly, simulan natin sa'yo, Gladys.
Siguro na lang para medyo lighten the mood, no, as an Aries, I guess natural. Sarili kong tapang na lang ito, no. Kahit na kinakabahan pa rin sa pandemic, pero somehow tapang within myself, and then at the same time with all the people, na yung mga kabataan na kasama namin nagvo-volunteer sa first time voter to register their own mga fellow sa barangay nila. And I think that enough, no? Makikita mo yung effort nila, magugulat ka na lang na parang, wow, nakapagpa-register talaga tayo, no? Months ago, we were just planning for this, pero ngayon nagagawa natin. And I think yun enough ay isang solid na source of tapang sa advocacy to keep going and to call for more young people, no? Kasi this is for them, this is for us pala, no? Bata pa rin pala ako. Minsan, I feel old. Kasi there are more younger people than me who actually wants to get registered, excited na bumoto. And I think, no, more people should see that. And 2022 coming elections is something na historical and grabe na experience, no? Feeling ko first time voter ulit ako. So, ayun, I think yung excitement and at the same time yung parang tapang ko na lang sa sarili ko, that helps with the advocacy and kahit nakakatakot yung pandemya.
Okay, maraming salamat, Gladys. As an Aries daw, doon siya humuhugot ng ng tapang. Ako as a Taurus, pwede rin. Ikaw, RJ, anong horoscope mo at saan ka humuhugot ng tapang?
Libra ako, pero on a more serious note, no, humuhugot ang kabataan ng tapang sa aming advokasya sa paniniwala na kapag nagkaisa ang kabataan sa paparating na eleksyon, kasama ng ibang sektor at ay mahahalal natin ang mga karapat-dapat, matapat, at may kakayahan, yung mga walang bahid ng korupsyon sana, no, o anumang katiwalian ng mga lingkod bayan, at matatapos din ang kalbaryong pinagdadaanan ng milyon-milyong Pilipino nitong pandemya at mabilis nating mararating yung new normal or better normal na inaasam nating lahat. We're also hopeful for a higher voter turnout sana this time around in spite of the pandemic, since COMELEC is doing everything they can to ensure that the elections will push through and will be safe for voters, as what has been proven during the Palawan plebiscite. So a higher turnout is important so that there will be more voices in this democratic process.
Thank you, RJ. So, ayan na, in some way, all of us are first-time voters for this election, We're all gonna voting pandemic for the first time, 'di ba? For a national election kasi alam ko meron nangyaring election sa Palawan. Pero in some way, 'di ba, all of us are first time voters. At tama yung nangyari kanina na sinabi ko 47 days pero 43 yung lumabas kasi it's really iba-iba pala. So Gladys, thank you for pointing that out. Sinalo mo kami. So tama yun na, 'di ba? It's not everybody gets the full 47 days kasi iba-iba nga yung protocol per city. So thank you for pointing that out. Jules?
Yeah. Okay. So syempre maraming salamat po sa ating mga guests na nakasama natin sa lumalaking #PH Vote Coalition. So we're inviting you also, no, Gladys and RJ, na maging bahagi dito sa coalition na to. Tama po narinig niyo dahil bukod sa #Courage on Coalition for Human Rights, nilulunsad na rin ng Move PH ng Rappler ang #PH Vote Coalition. Layunin po na koalisyong ito na mas palakasin pa ang panawagan ng mga organisasyon upang magparehistro ang mga Pilipino at bumoto sa darating na halalan. Kung nais nyo pong maging bahagi ng #PH Vote Coalition, mag-email lamang po sa move.ph@rappler.com. Once again, maraming salamat sa iyo, RJ and Gladys. Thank you so much for sharing your time with us. And yeah, see you later. Happy. Thank you so much. Okay, so tuloy-tuloy po tayo sa ating diskusyon sa hapong ito. Narinig na rin natin ang pulso ng mga kabataan at ang kanilang mga ginagawa para manghikayat, para magparehistro at syempre para bumoto sa Mayo. Ngayon naman po ay makakasama natin ang Direktor ng Election and Barangay Affairs ng Commission on Elections o COMELEC. Let's welcome Attorney Frances Arabe. Ma'am Frances, welcome to Courage On. Welcome to Rappler.
Thank you, Jules, for having me today. Congratulations on your new show. #Courage On.
Thanks so much. Okay, ma'am, ngayon na simulan na natin. Maraming mga tanong yung mga kabataan kanina, no? So, nasa pandemya pa rin po tayo, hindi pa rin po malinaw kung kailan po ito matatapos at sunod-sunod pa rin itong mga strict lockdowns. Ang tanong po ng bayan, posible kayang ma-extend ang registration deadline?
Alam mo, Jules, ang COMELEC naman nakikinig, no, sa taong bayan din sa kanilang clamor for an extension. And just to inform everyone, ang ating Commission and Bank ay kasalukuyang humihingi ng mga input at mga comments ng ating various departments, working committees, and our field offices on this matter. So the COMELEC will decide later on if we can extend kasi Jules, ang registration kasi ay isang activity kung saan nakadepende yung ibang preparasyon ng COMELEC for the May 9, 2022 elections. For example, yung project of precincts natin or yung pagpipresinto, inaantay natin na matapos muna yung registration. Pangalawa, yung pag-appoint natin ng ating mga electoral boards. So, depende rin yan sa presinto and most of all, yung pagpapa-imprenta natin ng mga balota. So, there are a lot of activities that will follow the registration period na lahat ito, kung i-extend natin yung registration natin, lahat din sila uurong. But just for the information din of everybody, na-meet na rin nga ng COMELEC ang target niya at pinag-aaralan kung kaya pa na i-extend ang ating registration kahit konti lang. So we will make an announcement later on if there will be an extension. Anyway, ang deadline pa naman is September 30. So pakiabangan na lang.
Okay. Attorney Frances, syempre when we're talking about public policy, particularly on registration extension or what, mahalaga yung public clamor dyan, di ba? So, ibig sabihin po ba possible na mapakinggan ng COMELEC if ever itong mga organizations natin ay manawagan for extension? Would there be any possibility na mapakinggan sila?
Yes, of course. Oo. Our Commission and Bank will take into consideration itong lahat ng mga appeal for extension vis-a-vis our timeline for the preparations for the elections.
Alright, ayan sa lahat ng mga youth orgs na nanonood ngayon, alam niyo nang gagawin ninyo. Kailangan natin magkaisa na manawagan sa COMELEC na i-extend itong registration elections. Okay. Ma'am, nabanggit nyo kanina no na first time natin mag-eleksyon sa gitna ng pandemya. Posible kaya ito makaapekto sa pagbaba ng voters turnout kahit na maraming mga nagparehistro? I think nabanggit nyo ma'am no more than 5 billion na yung nakapasok.
Yes.
Pero yeah, ano yung may pupulot nating aral base po dun sa plebisito na pinangunahan ng COMELEC sa Palawan? Kasi during a pandemic din yun eh. Is there any chance na may learnings tayong makuha doon for the implementation of elections by May 2022?
Yes, Jules. Actually, yung plebiscite na yan ang ating test election for the conduct of a nationwide election. So nakita naman natin na sa Palawan plebiscite, hindi nagpapigil ang mga tao sa pandemya para bumoto. In fact, ang COMELEC was expecting mga 40% na voter turnout, pero mas maganda pa ang lumabas. It was 60%. So dito makikita natin na siguro dahil in a state of pandemic, naramdaman din nila kung ano ang importansya ng good governance. So we are expecting that there will be also a good voter turnout. At saka presidential din kasi ito, Jules, ang experience ng COMELEC, basta presidential elections, many would really want to vote.
Okay, yan. So abangan natin yan. Sana nga po hindi maging sagabal itong pandemya para ma-exercise natin yung right to vote natin. So let's move forward now, Ma'am Frances, no, sa iba't ibang mga issues na nakikita natin ngayon na election related. Ito medyo nakakatuwa ito. Hindi nakakatuwa, medyo nakaka-frustrate actually. Ma'am Frances, naglipa na itong mga billboards at mga tarp sa buong Pilipinas. Kung saan-saang sulok may mga billboards sa kalsada, meron sa mga tricycle, sa lahat, nakapaskil na agad yung mga mukhang nagpapakilala na dahil sa kakulangan nga ng batas, hindi naman daw maituturing na electioneering ito. Ma'am Frances, tama po ba? Pero kung may nakikinig po ng mga aspiring candidates sa show natin ngayon, anong maipapayo nyo sa kanila bilang isang Pilipino at bilang isang COMELEC official?
Sa mga nagbabalak na tumakbo, no, true Jules, hindi siya bawal by law, no. Kasi ang policy natin, they do not become a candidate until after they file their certificate of candidacy. So, yon, on the basis of that rule, nakakapagpaskil sila kasi nga hindi pa sila covered ng ating regulations, no. But just the same, we would like to remind all our candidates na alam naman natin na bawal talaga ang premature campaigning, no? The very essence of the law would say that it is frowned upon. So since alam natin na bawal ito, let's just respect that and run an honorable and a fair campaign para magandang halimbawa na rin. Di po ba?
Tama. Ayan sana po nakikinig itong mga aspiring candidates natin na doon sa mga nabanggit ni Ma'am Frances. Ngayon naman po, kung yun po ang payo ninyo sa ating mga aspiring candidates, ngayon naman para sa mga botante natin, Ma'am Frances, anong payo nyo sa kanila sa pagpili sa susunod na mga leader ng bayan? Lalo na't ngayon, sunod-sunod na po yung mga surveys na naglalabasan.
Yeah. Sa mga botante, we have realized during this time of pandemic how good governance is important, no? We have seen the difference ng performance ng ating mga leaders. So, it's actually, Jules, a very subjective thing. Depende sa botante kung ano ang kanyang core value, ano ang important sa kanya. So, my advice is for them to know what their core value is, what is important to them. Is it healthcare? Is it education? Is it climate change? And then look for that candidate who will represent that core value or that important thing in your life. Sabi nga ni Katy Perry, if you stand for nothing, you fall for everything. So yan ho, know your core values and find your candidate that fits your core values.
Ayun naman. Maraming salamat, Ma'am Frances. At na-link natin yan sa quote ni Katy Perry. Okay, maganda. Important na tumindig dahil sa mga issue. So magandang advice yun, Ma'am Frances, sa mabutante. As much as possible, gawin natin issue-based yung pagpili natin. Hindi lamang base sa personality. Kung meron mang personality kasi champion nila yung mga values na pinapahalagahan natin. Okay, Ma'am Frances, bago ka namin paalisin na dito, very important tong question na tinatanong namin, saan ka humuhugot ng lakas? Lalo na bilang isang government official sa loob ng COMELEC na may mahalagang tungkulin sa bayan.
Well, tayo naman ay isang public servant, and what we desire is what's best for the country. So tayo ay humuhugot ng lakas doon sa pag-asa na ang lahat ng itong ginagawa natin ay may saysay at may maitutulong sa ating bayan.
Alright. Ma'am Frances, maraming salamat po sa inyong panahon at sana po huwag kayong magsawa sa susunod pa nating mga panayam in the future. Muli po nakasama natin ang Direktor ng Election and Barangay Affairs ng Commission on Elections, Attorney Frances Arabe. Ma'am Frances, thank you so much po. Ingat po kayo.
Thank you, Jules.
Alright. Okay, Happy. Let's go. Ano bang susunod natin gagawin?
Yes, so actually gusto ko yung sinabi ni Director Arabe, no, yung you have to choose based on your values. Alam mo, Jules, pwede rin yan sa love life 'di ba? When you're choosing a partner, dapat someone na in line sa values mo,
Totoo
'di ba?
naman. Kasi kasama mo na forever yun parang hirap naman bumangon every day na hindi kayo pareho ng values. So make sure na value-based, issue-based, right?
Yes. So, ngayon naman, we asked questions to some of our social media followers in the past few weeks about ano ba ang itsura ng buhay lockdown ninyo. So, we're gonna show some of your submissions today. So, these are taken from some of the answers of the Rappler followers that sent their images about their buhay lockdown. So, ipakita natin some of those. We asked you to send an image. Ayan. So this one is from Fatima. She's showing us this cross-stitch work of hers. Ayon. So sabi niya, it helped her soothe her anxiety and it was a good gift for her friends abroad. So salamat, Fatima. Next.
Okay, sunod naman. Okay, isang plant teacher during lockdown. So yan, isa siyang photographer na pinipicturean niya yung mga halaman. Ako, ang daming mga ganyan sa itong lockdown since last year. Ikaw rin ba, Happy? Nahilig ka rin sa mga halaman?
Hindi, actually. Hindi ako hindi ako naging plantita.
Okay. Ayan. Anong next natin?
Ayon. So ito naman si Jansen. He turned to the arts actually. So ito we can see him painting and it helps him stay strong, safe, and healthy. So it helps him get the stress and hardships away through art. So we can see him
name niya. Jansen Talento. Okay. Okay. Next. Okay, ito naman. Ito, photography din. Si Renz Ronda, 20 years old from Albay. So lockdown opens a new door to explore a new side of mind that is photography. Ganda na makuha niya. Pwede mo yung i-post sa The Rappler Room para pwede natin ma-feature sa Rappler. Thank you so much, Renz, for sending this.
Yon. Next naman, we have someone, ayan, si Jerry. She showed us a picture of her phone. So sabi niya, naging dependent daw siya sa phone niya because she's been using social media and following sites like Rappler, Onax naman. And also watching good videos. And it's a social media or the internet was a place for her to connect with other people. Tapos nag-yoga rin siya. And she puts those skills into practice. Ayun. Thank you, Jerry.
Okay, next naman. Ayun. Ayan. Gusto ko to. Making Dalgona Coffee. Si Eliza Linzo. Isa siya sa milyong-milyong mga kababayan nating na hilig sa Dalgona Coffee. Nakagawa ka rin ba niyan, Happy?
Hindi successful. Kaya ayoko na sa Dalgona Coffee.
Wala kasi.
Oo, so ang tagal, hindi ko nagawa, so I gave up. So, well, it's good to see that others are still doing that and it gives them comfort. So, good for you. Pero ako hindi ko kaya. Next.
Okay, mula sa kape. Okay.
Eto si teacher Mommy Heidi. So ayan, this is her setup. So siya ay isang preschool teacher at kinonvert niya yung room niya para ganito, mas conducive for her online teaching. So thank you and shout out po to all the hardworking teachers there who are having to deal with online and distance learning. Thank you for sharing.
Salamat po. Okay, next naman. Okay. Books naman, reading more books during the ECQ. Yan yung sinasabi ni Francis Dave Legalisa. So mga libro. May mga friends ako ganyan eh. Ang dami nilang nakuhang mga libro tapos natatapos nila agad. Ikaw rin ba, Happy? Dami mo libro sa likod?
Kunwari lang yan.
Okay.
Oo, nagbabasa din ako. Kasi it's to limit my screen time para rin to give my eyes a break. I go for books. Yan.
Okay, next
one.
Is that... Meron
Wala.
pa ba? Last na pala yon. Okay, so patuloy lang po kayong magpadala ng inyong mga photos. Okay, tuloy-tuloy po yung call out natin sa page ng inyong Mabuhay Lockdown. So send nyo lang po doon sa email address na nakapost sa Facebook natin para syempre ma-feature din namin yung mga ginagawa nyo during this lockdown. Happy?
Yon. So, Jules, if you notice, a lot of the people, how they dealt with the pandemic or lockdown life, buhay lockdown, a lot of them turned to the arts and culture. So, magandang yung nag-photography, meron nag-painting din. So, magandang oo.
Yeah, kasi actually marami ring on the stage side, 'di ba? Maraming plays yung pinapalabas na rin virtually. Kumbaga parang beyond the usual stage na yung nakikita natin during this pandemic. So, you know this very well, Happy, kasi para sa kaalaman ng mga viewers natin, si Happy rin ay isang stage actress.
Oy,
diba?
grabe.
Artista yan si Happy.
Pinang-segue ko lang to kasi speaking of arts and culture, 'di ba? Meron tayong nangyaring issue recently about Philippine Indigenous culture naman. So this is the issue between the Nas Academy and them trying to feature Wang Od and using that to be for the Nas Academy. Ano ba yung sometimes it was called a scam by the grandniece of Wang Od. So I think we have a video to show our viewers.
Yeah, para mas maunawaan natin ang issue na to, panoorin natin ang video na ito.
Last week, Kalinga tattoo artist and Dangal ng Haraya Award for Intangible Cultural Heritage awardee Apo Wang Od found herself in the social media spotlight over a course that she may or may not have given full consent to. Wang Od, a 104-year-old traditional tattoo artist of the Butbut tribe, was featured in a 750 peso Nas Academy course that promised to, quote, reveal all the rituals, tools, and methods for making traditional tattoos. Cool, right? Not really. Grace Palikas, Wang Od's grandniece and a tattoo artist herself, called the course a scam. A quick segue. What's Nas Academy? It's a digital learning platform founded by this guy, Nusir Yassin, a 29-year-old Palestinian Israeli best known for minute-long videos under his vlog, Nas Daily. We'll hear more about him later, but for now, back to the main story. Grace said her grand-aunt did not sign any contract. She also said Wang Od did not understand translators who were with the Nas Academy team. Grace has since deleted these Facebook posts, but in a Facebook group, she said, "Some people are taking advantage of our culture. Please help us stop this disrespect to the legacy of Apo Wang Od and the Butbut tribe." Nas Academy a day later would deny Grace's allegations and show a video of what appears to be Wang Od affixing her thumbprint onto a contract. According to Nas Academy, this signified Wang Od's full consent to the project. But it's not that simple. According to University of the Philippines anthropology professor Nestor Castro, since Wang Od comes from the Butbut tribe of Kalinga, consent needs to come not just from Wang Od, but other members of her tribe. The National Commission on Indigenous Peoples Cordillera is now looking into the contract. This is what Regional Director Marlon Bosantog had to say. Bandying on social media a contract is not a proof of compliance. The Wang Od course has since been taken down from the Nas Academy page, but the incident has sparked a whole different discussion on Facebook. After Grace denounced the course as a scam, Luis Mabulo of the Cacao Project shared what had apparently been a bad experience with Nusir in 2019. In a Facebook post, she claimed Nusir only wanted content and rejected the Cacao Project and her story for not being, quote, clickable. Nusir has since retaliated with his own lengthy Facebook post calling Luis's allegations as online falsehoods. Their barbs have spawned a new issue of its own, but we'll let you explore that on your own time. Back to the main story. After putting the course down, Nas Academy announces that they're pausing Philippine operations. Miss Universe 2018 Catriona Gray, who was set to launch the Catriona Gray Academy under them, also paused her project. And Nusir? Nas Daily, his main Facebook page, lost over 500,000 followers the same day Grace called him out. His Philippine-oriented page, Nas Daily Tagalog, at the same time gained 28,000 followers. I guess everyone wants the tea. But on a serious note, more than being another episode of tea spilling, shade throwing, and bardahan on the internet, the criticism and backlash against Nas Academy's would-be wangod course draws attention to a bigger issue: how we treat, respect, or disrespect the Philippines' indigenous tribes, and how some people profit from their culture.
Ayon. So, I'm sure all of you heard about this issue, and today makakasama po natin yung nagsulat ng isang post na na-feature dun sa video na dun, si Professor Nestor Castro. Nestor, hello. Welcome to the show.
Hi, good afternoon. Happy.
Hello. So, ayun, I think I'll go straight to it. So, alam ko yung post mo na yon, it went viral. I think a lot of people were sharing it, and it was because of that post that I actually found you and asked you to be in this show. So, can you tell us a little bit about with the situation? Is this the first time that this has happened, where our indigenous culture was somewhat exploited or appropriated or taken advantage of?
Actually, there have been many times in the past that this has happened, but it's on a smaller scale, and it's not on a digital platform. So, but the latest one was only last year, also in Kalinga, when a clothing apparel wanted to use tattoo designs also from Kalinga as their designs for their clothing line. But the elders of Kalinga intervened and said, no, this is not possible. You have to get our consent first before we allow you to do it. So they came out with a petition. This was signed in 2020, where different elders of Kalinga signed and said, if you are going to use our traditional tattoo designs, then you have to go through the process of free and prior informed consent, which is being facilitated by the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples.
Yun. So thank you. It seems consent is a very, very important thing in the culture, getting consent from the elders. I'd like to ask, so because there's a lot of appreciation now, of course, about our indigenous peoples and the culture, the ancestral heritage, where do you draw the line of appropriation and appreciation, and appreciation versus exploitation, or where do you draw the line? How do you know whether what you're doing is still okay?
I think the bottom line is understanding the culture of the specific indigenous tribe or indigenous community, because of course there are many things that indigenous peoples themselves are willing to share. For example, we see in theater, for example, we have dances, we have music coming from indigenous peoples. Well, that is fine, and they have allowed us to use it. But there are certain parts of their culture that are only done in very specific occasions, and it will be accompanied by certain rituals. So, for example, if you're going to use textiles as wall decor, I think at the back of my wall, I have a wall decor coming from the Yakan. You should know first, is this design allowed as a decor item, or is it a death blanket? Of course, You cannot use a death blanket for decorative purposes. So the bottom line is understanding the culture. And I know outsiders, because they are not members of a specific group, are unaware of that. That's why they have to investigate. And the best way of knowing if we could borrow it or not is to get their consent. Because if they agree that, yes, yes, you can use it, then there's no problem at all.
Right. So given this, do you think that our indigenous peoples and the culture, do you think it has the protection that it needs? Does it have enough protection with the institutions that we have that were set up to watch over and oversee the indigenous people?
Well, compared to situations in the past, we are in a better situation now because one, we have a law. This is the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997. So prior to 1997, we didn't have that. So as I said a while ago, there were many problems in the past, but there was no law then. Another advantage now is, of course, because of this law, we have the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples. This is a government agency whose mandate is to protect Indigenous peoples' rights. So when you go into contracts with Indigenous peoples, the NCIP should always be third-party witness to ensure that the law is being respected. Because many members of the indigenous community are by themselves, yes, they know their own culture, but are not familiar with the laws of the land. Even IPRA, probably many of them are not familiar. So this is the strength now. We have protections. However, it is not sufficient. Of course, we have so many indigenous groups in the Philippines. Not all of them can be monitored by the NCIP. So I think those people who are near these areas, such as those in the academe, students, professors, can link up with indigenous communities and offer their services as to how they can help the indigenous peoples themselves in protecting their rights. One thing that I'm thinking about is many of the customary laws of indigenous peoples are based on oral tradition and they are not codified. So this is a very important project because outsiders will always say, but I'm not familiar with the laws of the Kalinga. Where do I read that? And then there's nothing written because people know it in Kalinga because they chant it. But of course, we have to share it also to outsiders. And a good way of sharing that is by codifying it. That means putting it down in writing.
Right. So capturing the oral tradition and making it something that we can read and last and pass on to different generations. So there's greater awareness. So what would be your advice then? So because obviously with the reaction of people with the Nas Academy issue, people seem to have reacted in that way because they were interested in our culture and parang in some way they didn't like the idea of people exploiting our indigenous culture. So what would be your advice then for people, maybe future influencers, for example, who might want to feature something from our indigenous groups or designers? What would be your advice to them? Like, where can they start?
Okay, so for those who have not read what I posted on my Facebook page, I gave two basic advices. First is respect for the culture. I said respect for Kalinga culture because, of course, Wangod is Kalinga. But of course, if you're going to venture in a project in other indigenous communities, you have to respect the local culture of the Subanen, of the Aita, of the Ibanag, etc., etc. And to be able to respect the culture, first of all, you have to be sensitive about differences. Don't always assume that you have the same mindset. So you have different worldviews, you have different things, different ways of looking at things. And of course, do some research. There would be review of literature, just like anyone in the academy will know this, review of literature of what that culture is about, and then invite some members of that community to give you orientation about their culture. What are the do's and don'ts? So that's the first advice. The second is follow the law. Now, because we are talking about traditional arts, crafts, music. So this will be all under the mandate of the Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act, or IPRA. So be familiar with IPRA and its implementing rules and regulations, as well as other ordinances of the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, particularly on how to secure consent. And it says there that consent should be acquired through a collective, because indigenous peoples belong to specific groups, and the knowledge that they have about their arts, their crafts, their music is something that was passed on to them by their ancestors through a series of generations. So this is not an art that was just invented by a particular tattoo artist, but was passed on through time. And we have to discern what in those designs can we share to outsiders, and which ones no, we have to get the consensus of the entire group. If they agree, then there's no problem. If they don't agree, that's it. We have to respect that. So these are the general tips that I could give.
Thank you. So there was actually a question from social media. Somebody wanted to know, I know you said that you need to gain consent, because consent and permission is a really, really big thing in Indigenous culture. But how do you go about it? As in, do you go there and just say, hi, hello, I want to ask for consent? So very like basic, but where do you start? How do you go about it?
Okay. In the case of Wang Od first, okay, because we could discuss other things. In the case of Wang Od, actually, informally, the people of Buscalan, this is the village of Wang Od, they have already given their consent that domestic and foreign tourists could go to their village, which is Buscalan in Tinglayan, Kalinga, to get a tattoo from Wang Od. Okay, the mere fact that they're allowed to enter their village is tantamount to agreeing. Yes, you can do that. But the problem with the Nas Academy, this is a digital platform. So those who studied under this platform, they don't enter the village, and the people of particularly the elders, do not have any say whether yes, you could enter, quote unquote, into our world or not. People could just get that information and use it for any purpose that they like. So there are no checks and balances in this particular case. Now, when we talk about other types of knowledge, what we call indigenous knowledge from indigenous peoples, maybe better if we are to follow the law is link up with the National Commission on Indigenous Peoples, because they have a team that conducts field-based investigation. This team will say, there are IPs there, or indigenous peoples. Oh no, there are no IPs. And even if there are indigenous peoples, these are the elders in that particular community. So that's an easier protocol. but others may say that's a too bureaucratic process. I actually have friends. I actually have contacts within the village. Why would I go to NCIP? So yes, it could be the other track. Go into the village, talk with the elders, and the elders will also say, uh, uh, please orient us with what you plan to do with our knowledge. And then they will also give advice to outsiders. Please contact NCIP also because we need them to witness what we are negotiating about.
Right. So thank you. I think, with this issue for me, I think it also revealed how little we know about our own indigenous cultures and this whole concept of gaining consent and permission from the elders and how it's given collectively. So I think I'd like to end just by asking you, because we ask this to all our guests, it's rare that people are interested in this and pursue it as a field of study. Why did you choose to do it, and where do you find the courage to continue doing the work that you do?
Uh, okay, so I was since I was in the elementary grade, I really wanted to take anthropology. I was a wide reader. I During that time there was no Google yet, so I read encyclopedias. I was very much interested in different cultures. So this attracted me to the discipline of anthropology. And during my college days at the University of the Philippines, this is to reveal the age. I'm not like your first guests who are young ones. So this was a time when the Kalingas were being threatened with a hydroelectric dam. This is the Chico River Hydro Basin project. And the people of Kalinga protested that construction of the dam. They were led by Makliing Dulag, who is a member also of the Butbut tribe, the same tribe where Wang Ot comes from. So I was very much, I became aware about the conditions of the Kalinga, particularly the Butbut. I have been there even during my college days. So my contacts with the community has been continued. And when I did my PhD dissertation, my dissertation was on the politics of identity in Kalinga. So it was really a long engagement, and this is where I'm coming from.
Ayon. So for all those people who are watching and are curious to know how to even start, if you want to learn more, diba, just look at the journey of Nestor, who followed his curiosity and stood in solidarity with the indigenous people. So with that, thank you, Professor Nestor Castro. You have a Facebook page, diba, that people can check out if they want to learn more. So thank you for joining us in Courage On.
Welcome.
All right, so I'll call back my co-host Jules to join me here as we come to the end of our second episode of Courage On, Tumindig, Makialam at Kumilos. Ano na, Jules? Kumusta ka na dyan?
Happy, very meaningful, no? Makabuluhan yung naging episode natin ngayon kasi ang dami nating learnings from the efforts of the youth sector para sa upcoming elections, from the efforts of the COMELEC, and right now, dito sa very interesting issue na nangyayari dito kay Apo Wang Od and with Nas Daily. Anong takeaways mo so far?
Well, ako, I really learned a lot. Natutuwa ako because for me, when Professor Nestor was talking about his journey, na it started with parang a dam being built, and so the indigenous people protested. Alam mo yun, this spirit of activism, of being involved and standing up, yung sinasabi nga nating tumindig, it's nice to see that across all of the cultures of the Philippines, diba? Akala natin nangyayari lang siya online, pero it happens also with our indigenous people. So I think, nowadays, kapag naririnig natin activism or activista, parang napaka-negative yung connotation. But actually, it's something that we do in our culture, diba? Yung tumindig, makialam, kumilos, and like in our indigenous cultures, 'di ba? Parang consent is drawn collectively, always with the consent of the group, the collective, the community. So, ang ganda-ganda nung image na yon for me. Ikaw naman, Jules.
Yeah, siguro from my end, mag-dwell na lang ako doon sa effort sa mga kabataan. Kasi for the longest time this year, ang dami kong mga nabigay na talks on voter empowerment. Ayoko na sa tawagin voter education actually. Voter empowerment yung ginagamit. Even for PH vote, yun yung gagamitin natin. Kasi to me, if we use voter education, parang there is an assumption na parang less educated ba yung mga voters na yon. So, better na voter empowerment na lang just to strengthen what they know doon sa mga nalalaman natin for the elections. Pero siguro somehow #real talk tong sasabihin ko na when we're talking about the youth kasi, the real talk, what happens on the ground is, the reality is, hindi naman talaga iisang tandem or isang kandidato yung binoboto ng youth sector. That's true. In 2019, nasa 26 point something million ang youth voters natin na registered. Pero ang question is, yung 26 million ba yun, iisang kandidato lang yung binoto? No. Because what happens on the ground is, itong youth sector na mobilize yan across all candidates. So what am I saying here? Hindi ako naging pessimist or something. I just want the youth sector to realize na this is, ito yung nangyayari on the ground kapag election. So what we can do instead is, at least agree on a universal set of standards that we want on a leader. Ano ba yung ideal leader na dapat meron tayo? Especially now, nabanggit ni Ma'am Frances kanina to be more issue-based. Diba? Yung video na pinakita natin kanina sa We Decide, those are all issues and pwede natin manghugutan yun. Diba? Ano ba yung mga gusto nating mabago come 2022? Ayaw nyo na ba ng corruption? Ayaw nyo na ba ng mga patayan na parang na-normalize lang, etc.? Doon natin iangat yung discussion when we're talking about when we're choosing our next leaders. So yeah, that's my takeaway for this episode. So for our viewers, if we're trying to build a community here, kung meron kayong suggestions sa gusto nyo maging topics natin maybe in our third episode, that will be on the 28th. Suggest nyo lang dito sa comment section, or you could just also PM us on our social media accounts. So there you go, Happy. Diyan na po nagtatapos ang ating show para sa araw na ito.
Ayun. So maraming salamat sa ating mga viewers. We'll be back for, again, our third episode, August 28th. And remember, one thing I'm not gonna say na, around 40 days na lang before the end of registration. So please go out and register if you can, if it's safe to do so, please do so. So my name is Happy Ferraran and I am with Rappler Plus. Thank you for joining us today.
Let us speak truth to power. Ako po si Jules Giang. Thank you so much.